The wagon came to a halt. Little Lunara pressed her face against the coarse fabric, observing her stepmother descend with that icy gaze in her eyes. "This is where you disembark, child," Elowen declared, not even glancing back. The 8-year-old gripped her tattered cloth doll as the wagon rolled away, leaving her stranded on the dusty path with only sagebrush and an endless sky. She was unaware that Finn Stormborn, the wealthiest rancher in 3 counties, was watching from the ridge above, about to alter her life forever. The autumn breeze sliced through Lunara's thin gown like a blade. She stood in the heart of the Oregon Trail, watching the dust cloud from her stepmother's wagon shrink until it vanished entirely. Her bare feet were already aching from the rough terrain, and the sun was dipping low in the western sky. "Mama," she murmured to her ragdoll Leanna. It was the sole remnant she had from her biological mother, who had succumbed to fever winters prior. What is our next move? Lunara had always been aware that Elowen did not want her around. After Granderon's fatal mining accident last spring, Elowen made it evident that providing for one person was challenging enough. "You're not even my kin," she had often remarked. "Your father left me with nothing but debts and a dependent to support." The young girl surveyed the desolate prairie. She had overheard adults discussing wolves, bears, and hostile natives. Her stomach was already rumbling, and she had no food. No blanket to stay warm, no footwear to protect her feet. But Lunara was more resilient than she appeared. Living with Elowen had instilled in her a sense of strength. She chose a direction and began walking, clutching Leanna tightly to her chest. Perched on the ridge, Finn Stormborn lowered his telescope. He had been tracking a herd of wild mustangs when he noticed the wagon. The manner in which the woman had discarded the child and driven off without a backward glance made his jaw tighten. Finn was a formidable man, tall and broad-shouldered, with calloused hands and warm brown eyes. At 35, he owned the largest ranch in the Wyoming territory, the Double M, with more cattle than he could tally, and a spacious house that echoed with solitude. Locals referred to him as the wealthiest cowboy in 3 counties, but all that wealth couldn't fill the vacant rooms of his heart. He had been married once to a gentle woman named Serafina. They had planned to fill their home with children, but Serafina had died from childbirth fever, taking their infant son with her. That was a decade ago, and Finn had been alone ever since. Now he watched this small girl traversing the prairie as if she owned it, her head held high despite being abandoned. There was something about her that reminded him of Serafina, that same unyielding bravery. Finn made up his mind. He urged his horse down the ridge. Lunara heard the horse before she saw it. She turned around, clutching Leanna more tightly, prepared to flee if necessary. Upon noticing the rider, Lunara sensed something unusual about him, unlike the rugged men who occasionally visited Elowen. Finn reined in his horse a short distance away and tipped his hat. "Good afternoon, miss," he greeted softly. "You appear to be quite far from any settlement." Lunara raised her chin defiantly. "I'm headed to Oregon," she declared, though she was uncertain of the direction. "Oregon is quite a distance from here," Finn remarked, suppressing a smile. "May I inquire about your family? Where are they?" Lunara replied matter-of-factly, "I don't have any family. My mother passed away, and so did my father. My stepmother abandoned me here." Finn's anger surged, but he maintained a calm demeanor. "She left you here intentionally?" he asked. "She claimed she couldn't afford to feed me anymore." "Said I wasn't her responsibility." Lunara's voice was as indifferent as if she were discussing the weather. Jake dismounted and knelt in the dust to meet Lunara's gaze. "What's your name, young lady?" he asked. "Lunara Selene Ravenwood. And this is Leanna," she replied, holding up her doll. "Well, Miss Lunara Selene Ravenwood. I'm Finn Stormborn. I own a ranch nearby, and I was wondering if you'd like to join me for supper. My cook prepares the finest beef stew in the Wyoming territory." Lunara scrutinized his face carefully. Alawan had always cautioned her about trusting strangers, but this man had kind eyes, and her stomach ached with hunger. "I don't have any money to pay for supper," she said. "That's fortunate," Finn replied with a smile. "I don't charge little girls for supper. It's against my principles." Despite everything, Lunara almost returned his smile. "You have principles about little girls?" she asked. "Indeed I do. Rule number 1, little girls eat for free. Rule number 2, little girls should never be left alone on dusty trails. Rule number 3, little girls should always have a warm place to sleep." Lunara glanced around the empty prairie, then back at Finn's sincere face. "Are you a good man, Mr. Stormborn?" she asked. The question struck Finn deeply. "I strive to be, Miss Lunara. I truly do." She nodded slowly. "Leanna says it's all right to trust you." Finn regarded the worn doll solemnly. "Well, if Leanna approves, then that settles it." He stood up and extended his hand. "Shall we go enjoy that stew?" Lunara placed her small hand in his, and Finn felt a shift in his chest. Something that had been frozen for a decade began to melt. The Double M Ranch stretched across the valley like a small village. Lunara had never witnessed anything like it. There were barns, corrals, a bunkhouse for the cowboys, and a cookhouse from which tantalizing aromas already wafted into the evening air. But it was the main house that made her gasp. It was larger than any structure she had ever seen, constructed of logs and stone with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Lanterns glowed in the windows, giving it a warm and inviting appearance. "Does this place belong to just you?" Lunara inquired as Finn assisted her off his horse. "Just me and Selene, my housekeeper," Finn replied. "It can get quite lonely at times." As if she had been anticipating their arrival, Selene emerged onto the porch. She was a stout Mexican woman with graying hair and the most compassionate face Lunara had ever encountered. "Zephyr Kalen," Selene exclaimed upon seeing Lunara. "Finn, what have you brought home this time?" Finn introduced Lunara formally. "Selene, this is Miss Lunara Selene Ravenwood. She will be joining us for supper." Selene descended the porch steps and knelt before Lunara, taking in her tattered dress, bare feet, and disheveled hair. "I am Porachita," she murmured. "You appear as though you haven't had a proper meal in days." "Only since yesterday," Lunara admitted. "And I had half a biscuit then." Selene's eyes flickered with anger, but her voice remained soothing. "Well, we'll remedy that immediately. Come, Aurelia, let's get you cleaned up and fed." Finn observed as Selene led Lunara into the house, her words a blend of English and Spanish. The little girl seemed so tiny in the grand doorway. "She's staying, right?" Selene asked later, after Lunara had consumed 2 bowls of stew and drifted off to sleep on the sofa by the fireplace. Finn gazed at the slumbering child, still clutching her doll. "I can't simply send her to the orphanage in Cheyenne. She's endured enough. She's endured far too much." Selene nodded in agreement. "Look at those hands. She's worked tirelessly for someone so young." Finn had also noticed Lunara's hands, rough and calloused from labor, with old scars that resembled kitchen burns. What kind of woman would make an 8-year-old child toil so hard, only to abandon her on the trail? "I'll ride into town tomorrow," Finn declared. "I'll speak with Judge Silverbrook about the necessary legal steps." Selene smiled. "So, she is staying." Finn looked at Lunara once more. Even in sleep, she held her doll protectively. "Yeah," he whispered. "She's staying." Lunara awoke in the most comfortable bed she had ever experienced. For a moment, she couldn't recall her whereabouts. Then she spotted Selene placing a basin of warm water on the washstand. "Buenos dias, niña," Selene greeted with a smile. "Did you rest well?" Lunara sat up, gazing around the room in awe. It featured genuine glass windows with curtains, a lovely quilt on the bed, and a rug on the floor. "Is all of this truly for me?" she asked. "Indeed. This is your room now," Selene confirmed. "Finn said you are to stay here as long as you wish." "Really?" Lunara struggled to believe it. "But I can't afford to pay for anything." Selene perched on the edge of the bed. "Aurelia, listen to me. Finn Stormborn is a good man. His heart was shattered a long time ago and never healed properly. But yesterday, when he brought you home, I saw something in his eyes that I haven't seen in a decade." "What did you see?" Lunara asked. "Hope," Selene replied simply. "Now come, let's get you dressed. I have something for you." The something turned out to be a stunning blue dress with petticoats and all the trimmings. It was slightly large, but Selene assured her she would alter it. There were also genuine shoes, the first pair Lunara had ever possessed. "Where did these originate from?" Lunara inquired, her fingers tracing the smooth material. Selene's expression turned melancholic. "They once belonged to someone who no longer requires them." Someone who would be delighted to know a young girl was wearing them. Lunara didn't grasp the significance at the time, but she would later discover that the garments had belonged to Serafina Stormborn, Finn's late wife. He had preserved them all these years, unable to discard or gift them to anyone until Lunara's arrival. When Lunara descended the stairs in her new dress and shoes, Finn was in the kitchen, a plate of pancakes and bacon ready. "Well, aren't you looking sharp?" he remarked, his voice slightly gruff. Selene declared, "I can remain here. I can work diligently." Elowen, perched on a chair that was almost too high, declared that she was skilled at sweeping floors and washing dishes, seated across from her. "I'm certain you are if you wish to, but a girl should be learning how to read." It was better than anything Lunara had ever tasted. "What must I do to earn my keep if I want to learn?" Finn looked at her with a softness she'd never seen before. "A young lady like you should know how to write and do arithmetic," he said, leaning across the table and gently patting her small hand. "That's what we'll do." The following weeks blurred into a dream for Lunara. Each morning, Finn dedicated an hour to teaching her letters and numbers. Her eager mind absorbed everything like a sponge. Before long, she was reading simple words, then entire sentences. "Look, Leanna," she would tell her doll, "I can read what this says. The cat sat on the mat. Isn't that amazing?" In the afternoons, Finn taught her to ride. He had a gentle old mare named Goldflower who seemed to sense that her rider was unique. Initially, Lunara was frightened of being so high off the ground, but Finn walked beside her, one hand on the reins and the other ready to catch her if she fell. "You're a natural," he praised after she managed to stay on Goldflower for an entire circuit around the corral. "Soon you'll be herding cattle with the best of them." Selene instructed her in other skills, such as cooking, sewing, and managing a household. But unlike Alawan, Selene made learning enjoyable. She shared stories as they worked and sang Mexican songs that made Lunara giggle. In Mexico, where I grew up, Selene mentioned one day as they prepared tortillas, my grandmother used to say that God places people in our lives when we need them most. Finn needed you, Aurelia, and you needed him. But I'm nobody special, Lunara murmured, shaping her tortilla as Selene had shown her. Aurelia, you are very special. You possess a brave heart and a strong spirit. Finn sees this. That's why he wants you to stay forever. The word forever made Lunara's heart flutter. She had never experienced the concept of forever before. That night, as Finn was sharing a tale about a princess who rescued a dragon, Lunara gazed up at him. "Finn?" she asked. "Yes, sweetheart." "Could I call you Granderon?" Finn's hand paused on the page. For a moment he was speechless. When he finally met her gaze, his eyes glistened with tears. "I'd be honored," he murmured. "Truly honored." Lunara beamed and nestled closer to him. "Good night, Papa." "Good night, little one. Sweet dreams." Life on the ranch wasn't always smooth sailing. Lunara sometimes had nightmares about being abandoned on the trail, waking up in tears, calling for her mother. Finn would go to her room and stay with her until she drifted back to sleep, occasionally humming the lullabies that Serafina had loved. There were other hurdles, too. Some of the ranch hands were puzzled by their boss suddenly having a daughter. They murmured among themselves about the oddity of a man taking in a stray child. "She's got him wrapped around her little finger," Lunara overheard Cookie the cook say to one of the other men. "Mark my words, she'll be trouble." But most of the cowboys were kind to her. Old Garrick, who had been with Finn from the start, crafted her a tiny wooden horse. Young Peregrine taught her to whistle loudly enough to summon the dogs, and Dernan, the foreman, always doffed his hat when he saw her, as if she were a grown woman. One day, after Lunara had been at the ranch for 2 months, a stranger arrived. He was a gaunt man in a black suit, who introduced himself as Silas Stonefield, a representative of the Territorial Children's Aid Society. "I've received reports of an unaccompanied minor residing at this ranch," he told Finn, looking around disdainfully. "A ranch is no place for a young girl. She belongs in a proper institution where she can be raised properly." Lunara, who was hiding behind the kitchen door, felt her heart skip a beat. "Are they going to take her away?" "This little girl has a home," Finn said, his voice as cold as ice. "Here. She's been legally adopted." "I have the papers from Judge Silverbrook." "Be that as it may," Stonefield said, "a single man raising a child alone is highly unusual. The society believes she would be better off in one of our facilities." "Your facilities," Finn growled. "You mean that orphanage in Cheyenne, where the children toil 14 hours a day and sleep 4 to a bed?" "We provide structure and discipline," Stonefield replied stiffly. "You provide misery," Finn retorted. "Now get off my property before I have you removed." After Stonefield left, Lunara emerged from her hiding spot. Finn was standing by the window, his hands clenched into fists. "Papa," she whispered, "are they going to take me away?" Finn turned and knelt down, enveloping her in his arms. "No, sweetheart. Nobody will ever take you away. This is your home, and I'm your papa, and that's final. But what if they return? Then we'll confront them repeatedly, as often as necessary." Finn embraced her more tightly. "You are my daughter now, Lunara Selene Stormborn. That's an unalterable fact." Lunara felt her fear dissipate. Stormborn. She was Lunara Selene Stormborn now, not Ravenwood. She possessed a genuine family name. As winter drew near, Lunara had been residing at the ranch for 4 months. She could now read entire books, write her name in flawless cursive, and solve arithmetic problems that would have baffled children twice her age. She could ride Goldflower without a lead rope, and assist Selene with the cooking. Above all, she was learning to believe that this new life was genuine, that Finn wouldn't change his mind and cast her out, that Selene would always be present with a comforting embrace and a warm meal, that the nightmares of abandonment would gradually diminish. One frosty December morning, Finn summoned her to his study. It was a room filled with books, featuring a large desk and leather chairs. Lunara always felt quite mature when Finn invited her in here for her lessons. "I have something for you," Finn said, retrieving a small wrapped parcel. Lunara carefully unwrapped it. Inside lay an exquisite gold locket on a delicate chain. Upon opening it, she discovered a tiny photograph of a woman with gentle eyes and dark hair. "That's Serafina," Finn murmured softly. "My wife. She would have adored you immensely." "She's beautiful," Lunara whispered, tracing the photograph with one finger. "She always yearned for a daughter," Finn continued. "Someone to educate, love, and watch grow. I believe she sent you to me." Lunara gazed up at him, her eyes gleaming. "Truly? Truly? And I want you to have her locket. Not to replace your real mother, but because you are now part of our family. Serafina would want you to have it." Finn secured the locket around Lunara's neck. It was slightly too large for her, but she wore it with pride. "Thank you, Grandpa," she said, hugging him tightly. "I'll cherish it always." "I have no doubt, sweetheart." "I have no doubt." That evening, as Lunara prepared for bed, she examined herself in the mirror. The frightened, hungry little girl who had been left on the trail had vanished. In her place stood a self-assured young lady with radiant eyes and a future brimming with potential. She gently touched the locket. "Thank you, Mama Serafina," she whispered. "Thank you for guiding me to Papa." Spring arrived early in the Wyoming territory that year. The snow melted, the grass turned green, and Lunara celebrated her 9th birthday with the grandest party the Double M had ever witnessed. All the ranch hands attended, along with neighbors from miles around. Selene baked a cake with 9 candles, and Finn presented Lunara with her own horse, a lively young mare she named Iron Hand. Life was idyllic, which is why Lunara should have anticipated that it wouldn't endure. Elowin Ravenwood appeared on a sweltering July morning, driving the same wagon she had used to abandon Lunara nearly a year prior. A companion accompanied her this time. A burly man with a menacing gaze sat beside her, and 2 rugged-looking cowboys trailed behind. Lunara was tending to the garden with Selene when they arrived. Upon seeing her stepmother, Lunara's face lost all its color. "Zephyr Callan," Selene murmured, shielding Lunara behind her. Finn emerged from the barn, his expression darkening as he took in the visitors. "Elowin Ravenwood," he stated, his voice as cold as ice. "You've got some nerve showing your face here." Elowin descended from the wagon, attempting to maintain her dignity despite her worn attire. "I've come to take my stepdaughter," she declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Your stepdaughter?" Finn's laughter was bitter. "The one you abandoned on the trail like a sack of trash." "I was going through tough times," Elowin began, but her eyes flickered away from his. "But things are better now. Lorcan, here, is my new husband, and we can provide for Lunara properly." The burly man stepped forward. "Name's Lorcan Darkthorn," he said, "and I'm here to claim what's mine." "Lunara isn't yours," Finn said softly, but there was a threat in his voice. She's my legally adopted daughter. Well, see, that's where you're mistaken, Lorcan said with a cruel smile. He produced a folded document. This here says otherwise. It says I'm her legal guardian now, seeing as how I married her stepmother. Finn took the paper and scanned it, his jaw tightening with each word. This is a forgery, he said finally. That's signed by a judge in Colorado Territory, Lorcan said. All legal and proper. Behind Selene, Lunara was shaking. She recognized Lorcan now. He'd been one of the men who used to visit Alawan. He'd always looked at her in a way that made her skin crawl. I'm not going with you, she said, stepping out from behind Selene. Her voice was small but resolute. Alawan's face contorted with anger. You'll do as you're told, you ungrateful little brat. After all I did for you. All you did. Lunara's fear was morphing into anger. You made me work like a slave. You burned me with the iron when I didn't work fast enough. You left me to die. I never, Alawan protested, but her face was flushed. The child has scars, Finn said, his voice dangerously quiet. I've seen them. Lorcan shrugged. Kids get hurt. It's part of growing up. We'll be taking her and leaving. No, Lunara said more firmly. I won't go. Finn is my papa now. This is my home. Lorcan's eyes darkened. Maybe you need a reminder of your place, girl. He took a step toward Lunara, but Finn moved quicker. In an instant, Lorcan was on the ground with Finn's boot on his chest. Touch her and die, Finn said simply. The two cowboys with Lorcan reached for their guns, but found themselves facing 6 armed ranch hands who had appeared out of nowhere. Durnan had his rifle aimed at the first cowboy, while Garrick and Peregrine flanked the second. I'd think real careful about your next move, Durnan drawled. The tense standoff dragged on for what felt like an eternity. Eventually, Lorcan managed to stand, shaking off the dust from his attire. This isn't over, he growled at Finn. I possess legal documents. I'll return with the sheriff. Go ahead, Finn replied, his voice steady. And when you do, ensure you bring a genuine judge to scrutinize those counterfeit papers of yours. Once they had departed, Finn enveloped Lunara in his embrace. She was trembling violently. Are they going to take me away, Granderon? She murmured. Not if I have any say in the matter, Finn declared fiercely. But we must be clever about this. That document might be fraudulent, but it appears official enough to deceive some individuals. That night, Finn convened a gathering in the main house. Durnan, Selene, and several of the elder hands assembled around the kitchen table. What do we know about this Lorcan's Darkthorn? Finn inquired. Nothing favorable, Durnan responded, spitting into the spittoon. Rumors suggest he has a reputation for taking in orphans and exploiting them to the point of exhaustion. He receives payment from those who wish to avoid the responsibilities of raising children. Selene's complexion paled. Dios santo. They sell children. Not precisely sell, Tech corrected. More accurately, they lease them out. The child labors for their sustenance, and any surplus goes into Darkthorn's coffers. Finn's hands clenched into fists. Over my dead body. The issue, old Garrick remarked slowly, is that if he possesses documents that appear official, he might persuade a territorial judge, especially if he asserts that you are unfit to raise a girl. What do you imply? Jake questioned. Well, you are a single man residing alone with a young girl. Some individuals might deem that inappropriate. Finn felt ill. The notion that anyone could suspect him of harming Lunara was intolerable. However, he knew Garrick was correct. There were people who would jump to the worst conclusions. So, what is our course of action? Selene asked. Finn surveyed the table, taking in the faces of those who had become his family. We fight, but we do so within the bounds of the law. I am writing to Cheyenne tomorrow to consult with Judge Silverbrook. If anyone can assist us, it is he. I'll accompany you, Durnan offered. No, I need you here to oversee matters. If Darkthorn returns, do not allow him near Lunara. Lunara, who had been eavesdropping from the stairs, retreated to her chamber. She did not wish to bring trouble to Finn, but she also could not endure the prospect of returning to such a life. The bruises Elowen had inflicted had healed, but the fear lingered. She touched Seraphina's locket and made a silent vow. Whatever transpired, she would not go without a fight. Judge Silverbrook was an imposing figure, with silver hair and piercing eyes. He had known Finn for years and had officiated the adoption ceremony himself. The papers are forged, he stated, after examining Lorcan's documents. But they are convincing forgeries. Someone invested considerable effort to make them appear authentic. Can you halt their actions? Finn asked. I can attempt to. But Finn, you must comprehend something. The law does not always align with what is just. Some judges might scrutinize your circumstances and conclude that a young girl requires a woman's guidance. Finn's heart plummeted. They might take her away despite the forged documents. It's conceivable, but I have a plan. The judge leaned in. What if you were no longer a single man? Finn's gaze met his. I'm confused. Marriage, Finn. If you were wed to a respectable woman, no one could challenge your ability to raise Lunara. I can't just marry someone out of necessity, Finn objected. That wouldn't be fair to anyone involved. I'm not advocating for a marriage of convenience, Judge Silverbrook replied with a hint of a smile. I'm suggesting Selene Velasquez. Finn's jaw dropped. Selene? Don't tell me you haven't noticed the way she looks at you, or how you look at her. That woman has been in love with you for years, and you've been too oblivious to notice. Finn leaned back in his chair, his thoughts racing. Selene, kind and caring Selene, who had managed his household for 5 years. Selene, who had embraced Lunara with open arms and loved her as her own daughter. Even if that were true, Finn said slowly, I couldn't propose to her just to save Lunara. She deserves more than that. Finn Stormborn, you are the most stubborn man I've ever encountered, Judge Silverbrook said, exasperated. I'm not proposing you marry her just to save Lunara. I'm suggesting you marry her because you love her. You just haven't admitted it to yourself yet. During the long journey home, Finn found himself truly thinking about Selene. He recalled how her face brightened when she smiled, how she hummed while she cooked, how she'd wept when he brought Lunara home, not from sorrow, but from joy. He remembered how she'd shielded Lunara from Lorcan, standing between them like a protective lioness, the way she sang Spanish lullabies when Lunara had nightmares, the way she transformed their house into a real home. When had he stopped seeing her as just his housekeeper and started seeing her as Selene? By the time he reached the Dublum, Finn had reached a decision. But first he needed to ensure Lunara's safety. Lorcan returned 3 days later, this time accompanied by the sheriff from the county seat. Sheriff Ironhand was a fair man, but he was also meticulous about upholding the law. I'm sorry, Finn, he said, his voice heavy. But these papers appear legitimate to me. I have to allow them to take the girl. Those papers are forged, Finn stated firmly. Judge Silverbrook confirmed it. Perhaps, but I can't discern the difference. I must err on the side of caution. Lunara moved closer to Finn's side. She was dressed in her finest gown and had braided her hair with ribbons, as if appearing lovely could somehow offer her protection. "I won't go," she whispered. "This is my home." Lorcan stepped forward, that repulsive smile on his face. "Come on, girl. Don't make this more difficult than it has to be." "Wait," a voice called from the doorway. All eyes turned to see Selene standing there, adorned in her Sunday best, her hair neatly pinned up and her chin held high. "There's something important I need to share with all of you," she announced clearly. "Finn and I are tying the knot." Today, Finn's expression was one of sheer disbelief. The same went for everyone else present. That's impossible," Eloin stammered. "You can't just—" "Actually, they can," Sheriff Ironhand interjected, a look of relief washing over his face. "If Mr. Stormborn is married to a respectable woman, there's no doubt about his ability to raise the child properly." Lorcan's face flushed a deep purple. "This is a ploy. They're only doing this to keep the girl." "Are you?" Sheriff Ironhand asked Finn directly. "Is this marriage merely a farce?" Finn gazed at Selene, standing there with such bravery and beauty, and suddenly everything clicked into place. "No," he declared, his voice steady and resolute. "It's not a sham. I love her. I should have confessed my feelings years ago." Selene's eyes welled up with tears, but she wore a radiant smile. "Well then," Sheriff Ironhand said, "I suppose there's nothing more to discuss. Congratulations on your impending nuptials." After Lorcan and Eloin stormed out, muttering curses and threats to return with a judge, Finn gently took Selene's hands in his. "Selene," he murmured softly, "I need you to understand that what I said wasn't just to secure Lunara's future. I meant every word." "I know," she whispered. "I've been waiting for you to realize it." "Will you truly marry me?" he asked. "Not just for Lunara, but because you want to be my wife?" Selene reached up and tenderly touched his cheek. "Yes, Mamor. I will marry you because I love you. I have loved you for a very long time." Lunara enthusiastically threw her arms around both of them. "Does this mean Selene will be my mama now?" "If you want me to be," Selene replied, hugging her tightly. "Oh, yes," Lunara breathed. "I want that more than anything." They were wed that very afternoon by Judge Silverbrook, who had journeyed from Cheyenne as soon as he received Finn's telegram. The entire crew of the Double M gathered on the front porch to witness the ceremony. Selene wore Seraphina's wedding dress, which Finn had offered, and she had accepted with tears in her eyes. "She would want you to have it," Finn had said. "She would want you to be happy." Lunara stood beside them during the ceremony, holding a bouquet of wildflowers and radiating joy. When Judge Silverbrook pronounced them husband and wife, the cowboys cheered and fired their guns into the air. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lunara snuggled between her new parents. "Tell me about the day you found me again," she requested, as she did every night. "Well," Finn began, adjusting her comfortably against his side, "I was up on the ridge, tracking wild horses, when I spotted something unusual. A little girl striding across the prairie, as if she owned the entire territory." "And what did you think?" Lunara prompted. "I thought to myself, that little girl has more courage than most grown men I know. And I was right," Finn said. "And then what happened?" Selene picked up the story. Your father brought you home to me, and the moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be here. I had been hoping for a daughter, and there you were. We all lived happily ever after, Lunara said, even though she knew the answer. Indeed we did, Finn replied, gently kissing the top of her head. Indeed we did. 5 years later, Lunara Selene Stormborn stood on the same porch, now a poised young woman of 14. She could ride as skillfully as any cowboy, read more proficiently than most adults, and assist in managing the largest ranch in 3 counties. She still wore Seraphina's locket, though it now fit her perfectly, and she still had Leanna, her beloved rag doll, though she was starting to outgrow it. The double M had flourished even more under Finn and Selene's guidance. They had established a school for the children of the ranch hands and neighboring homesteaders, with Lunara serving as the teacher's aide, and they had expanded their family. Little Seraphina, named in honor of Finn's first wife, was now 3 years old and followed Lunara everywhere. Baby Corvus was just beginning to walk. Occasionally, Lunara would ride out to the spot where Elowen had abandoned her all those years ago. She would sit on her horse and gaze across the prairie, recalling the frightened little girl with the rag doll. She never saw Elowen or Lorcan again. News had reached them that Lorcan had been apprehended for fraud in the Colorado Territory, and Elowen had vanished without a trace. Sometimes Lunara wondered what had become of them, but mostly she was just relieved they were gone. On this particular evening, as the sun painted the Wyoming sky in hues of gold and pink, Finn joined her on the ridge. "Care to share what's on your mind?" he asked, settling his horse beside hers. "I was just reflecting on how different things could have been," Lunara said. "If you hadn't been tracking those Mustangs that day, if you hadn't spotted me on the trail," Finn smiled, the same warm smile that had won her trust all those years ago. "But I did see you. And you know what I believe?" "What?" "I believe it was meant to be. I believe Seraphina truly did send you to us. We needed each other, Lunara. We were all broken in our own ways, and together we became whole." Lunara reached over and squeezed his hand. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, sweetheart. More than all the cattle in Wyoming." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars begin to twinkle in the darkening sky. In the distance, they could see the lights of the double M glowing warmly in the valley below. Selene would be putting little Seraphina and Corvus to bed, probably sharing the same stories she had once told Lunara. "Grandpa," Lunara said suddenly. "Yes?" "Do you think there are other children out there, lost and frightened like I was?" Finn studied her face in the twilight. Even at 14, she had the same compassionate heart that had touched him when she was 8. "I'm certain there are. Why do you ask?" "I've been thinking. Maybe we could help them like you helped me. Perhaps we might establish a sanctuary for children who have nowhere else to turn." Finn's heart filled with a profound sense of pride. This was his daughter, not by blood, but by his own choosing and love, and she had blossomed into the very kind of person he had always envisioned. "That's an excellent notion," he remarked, "a truly excellent notion. We'll discuss it with Selene upon our return." As they journeyed back to the ranch, Lunara experienced a profound sense of fulfillment. She had discovered her role in life, her purpose, and her family. The frightened little girl from the trail was a distant memory, replaced by a young woman eager to make her mark on the world. The Double AM ranch lay tranquil in the valley, its windows shining like lighthouses of hope. And within those warm, inviting rooms, Selene was likely already devising plans to transform Finn's spacious, empty house into a home for children in need. After all, that was the Stormborn specialty. They mended broken things and restored them to wholeness. They guided lost souls to a place where they belonged, just as they had done for one terrified little girl on a dusty trail many years past. If this story touched you, give it a like and tell us in the comments. What would you have done if you were in their shoes? Subscribe to Frontier Stories and join us as we continue to tell stories of hope, resilience, and the beautiful, messy truth of Wild West.